The Canterville Ghost by Oscar Wilde. Tonight, you don't need to stay awake. You don't need to catch every detail. You can let the words drift by. This is an old house story, a quiet one. Set in the deep countryside, far from the day's noise. A family arrives from far away. They mean well. They are not easily frightened. But the house remembers. A stain returns where it should not. Footsteps come in the corridor at night. And a lonely presence tries, again and again, to be noticed. Nothing will jump out. Nothing will shout. The story will simply move, slowly and softly, like moonlight across a long hall. So settle in. Let your breathing slow. And when you're ready, we'll begin. Chapter 1. When Mr. Hiram B. Otis bought Canterville Chase, people warned him. They spoke gently, almost politely, as if they were offering advice about the weather. They said the house was haunted. Lord Canterville himself mentioned it during the sale. He felt he ought to. It was part of the history. Part of the burden of the place. He spoke of a relative, long ago, who had been frightened badly. He spoke of servants who would not stay, of nights broken by strange sounds in the corridor and the library. Mr. Otis listened without agitation. He was a practical man. He believed in what could be measured, what could be fixed, what could be improved. He said he would take the house as it stood. He would take the furniture. And if there was a ghost, he would take that too. They shook hands. The matter was settled. A few weeks later, the Otis family arrived. It was a warm evening in July. The road was long. The air smelled of pine and summer earth. They drove through fields and woods. They saw birds settle in the trees. They saw rabbits flash white tails through the brush. As they entered the avenue to the house, the sky darkened. Not violently, just enough to make the world feel hushed. The house stood ahead. Large, old, quiet. An old woman in black silk met them on the steps. Her manner was careful. Her voice was soft. She welcomed them in. They crossed the Tudor hall and entered the library. Tea was laid out. The room was panelled in dark oak. A stained glass window held the last light of day. As they sat, Mrs. Otis noticed a dull red stain by the fireplace. "I'm afraid something has been spilled," she said. The housekeeper answered in a low voice. "Blood has been spilled on that spot." Mrs. Otis disliked it at once. She asked that it be removed. She wanted the room clean and ordinary. Washington Otis, quick and confident, went down on one knee. He scrubbed the floor. He worked carefully. In moments, the stain was gone. For a breath, There was only the soft clink of tea things. Then thunder rolled outside. Lightning flashed. The housekeeper fainted. Mr. Otis remained calm. He lit a cigar, as if nothing unusual had happened. The storm raged that night, but no shape appeared, no voice spoke. Only the house listened. Chapter 2. In the morning, the stain had returned. It was in the same place, the same dull red, as if it had never been cleaned at all. Washington removed it again. He said it must be a trick of the old boards, or a stain that rose from beneath. The next morning it returned again. Soon the family began to watch for it, not with fear, with a quiet curiosity. They began to feel the house had habits, like an old clock that kept its own time. One night, after a warm day, they returned late from a drive. They ate a light supper. They spoke of ordinary things. No one mentioned ghosts. The house settled into silence. At about 1 o'clock, Mr. Otis woke to a sound in the corridor. A metallic clank, a slow approach, like chains drawn across boards. He rose. He lit a match. His pulse was steady. He opened the door. In the pale moonlight stood an old man of terrible aspect. His hair fell in grey coils. His clothes were ancient and ragged. From his wrists and ankles hung heavy manacles. Mr. Otis did not cry out. He did not step back. He spoke calmly, as if to a tired traveller. "My dear sir," he said, "I must ask you to oil those chains. Here is a small bottle for that purpose." He set the bottle down. He closed the door, and he returned to bed. For a moment, the ghost stood motionless. Then, with a sound like a breath, turning to anger, he fled. He went down the corridor, groaning. A faint green light trailed him. At the top of the stairs, a door flew open. 2 small, white-robed figures appeared. A pillow sailed through the air. The ghost vanished into the wall. The house fell quiet again. And somewhere behind the panels, something old and proud tried to understand what had happened. Chapter 3. At breakfast the next morning, they spoke of the night. Mr. Otis was mildly annoyed. He had meant well. He said it was not polite to reject a helpful gift. The twins laughed. Their laughter filled the bright morning room. Washington said the stain had returned again. As the days passed, the stain changed colours. Sometimes it was deep red. Sometimes violet. Once it was green, like an old jewel. Virginia, the daughter, was the only one who did not smile at it. The stain upset her. She could not say why. Then the ghost appeared again. Late one night, there was a crash in the hall. The family hurried down. A suit of old armour lay on the floor. In a chair sat the ghost, rubbing his knees as if in pain. The twins fired small pellets. Mr. Otis lifted a revolver and spoke in a firm voice. The ghost rose in fury. He swept through them like cold mist. Candles went out. The room went dark. From above, the ghost gave his famous laugh. He meant it to shake the house. He meant it to frighten the living blood. But Mrs. Otis came out in a dressing gown, quiet and practical. She offered him medicine as though he were ill. The ghost glared. He began to gather himself into another shape. Then he heard footsteps. He hesitated, and he vanished again, groaning. He returned to his room, wounded in a way that had nothing to do with pellets or falls. He had been met not by fear, but by calm. And calm was harder to fight. He planned another attempt. He dressed carefully. He waited for storm weather, which he loved. But when he glided toward Washington's room, he was stopped by something he did not expect. A second ghost. It stood in the corridor, motionless and enormous. Its face held a fixed grin. Its eyes burned with red light. It carried a bright weapon. For the first time in centuries, Sir Simon de Canterville felt true fear. He fled. At dawn he returned, gathering courage. The terrible figure had collapsed. Its head rolled away. Its weapon lay on the floor. It was not a ghost at all. It was a childish construction, a curtain, a turnip, a broom, a joke. A sign lay among the pieces. It warned of imitations. Sir Simon stared at it a long time. Then he withdrew, not in rage alone, but in exhaustion. The world had changed, and he did not know how to belong in it. Chapter 4. After that, the ghost grew careful. He crept softly. He wore slippers. He oiled his chains in secret. He took precautions. But the house had become a place of traps. Strings were stretched across the corridor. Sliding patches were laid on stairs. Water waited in the dark. He fell. He stumbled. He was soaked. He was mocked. Each time he retreated further into himself. He tried once more to visit the twins. The door opened. A jug of water fell upon him. Laughter shook behind the bed curtains. After that, he stopped trying to frighten them. He began to wander only when he had to, and sometimes he did not wander at all. He stayed behind the panels. He listened to the bright noises of the house, to music, to games, to life continuing without him. He became slowly a lonely thing in his own home. One night, later in September, he made an attempt to cross the hall. He was dressed in a simple shroud. He carried a lantern and a spade as if to remind himself of old performances. 2 figures sprang out and cried, "Boo!" close to his ear. Then someone met him with a spray of cold water. He vanished into the great stove to escape, choking through flues and soot. He returned to his room in dirt and despair. After that, he did not appear. The family assumed he had gone, but he had not. He was still there, hurt, tired, and watching from the shadows like a memory that cannot leave. Chapter 5. One afternoon, Virginia returned from riding. She had torn her habit on a hedge. She slipped up the back staircase to avoid being seen. As she passed the tapestry chamber, she noticed the door was open. She thought someone was inside. Perhaps a maid. She looked in. The ghost sat by the window. He did not startle her. He did not loom. He did not groan. He looked small in the great room. His posture was heavy. His face turned toward the falling leaves, as if he were listening to a sadness only he could hear. Virginia felt pity rise in her, the kind of pity that is quiet and brave. "I'm sorry for you," she said. "My brothers are going away soon. If you behave, they won't bother you." The ghost looked up in surprise. "It is my duty to walk," he said, "to rattle chains, to groan, to appear. It is why I am here." Virginia shook her head. "That's not a reason for existing," she said softly. She spoke of his wrongs, of his violence long ago, of the stain on the floor, of the paints he had taken when he could not find fresh blood. The ghost answered at first with pride, then with something like resignation. Finally, he said what he had never said before. He was lonely. He was tired, and he wanted to sleep. "I have not slept for 300 years, he said. Virginia's eyes filled with tears. She asked where he could sleep. He told her of a garden beyond the pine woods, a place of long grass and white stars of flowers, a nightingale singing through the night, the moon looking down, a yew tree spreading its arms. "You mean the Garden of Death?" Virginia whispered. "Yes," said the ghost. "To lie down, to have no yesterday, no tomorrow, to be at peace." He told her there was a prophecy in the library, 6 lines of old writing. He said it meant she could help him. Virginia did not fully understand, but she believed she could do something kind. "I am not afraid," she said, "and I will ask mercy for you." The ghost rose. He took her hand. His fingers were cold. His touch was strangely careful. As they crossed the room, the figures stitched in the tapestry seemed to move in the dim light. They seemed to warn her to go back. Virginia shut her eyes and held on. At the end of the room, the ghost whispered words she could not understand. The wall faded like mist. A dark opening appeared. Cold air rushed out. "Quick," said the ghost, and they stepped through. The panel closed. The room was empty. Chapter 6. When the bell rang for tea, Virginia did not come down. At first, Mrs. Otis was not alarmed. Virginia often wandered in the garden for flowers, but as the evening deepened, the house grew restless. Footmen searched. Rooms were opened. Cupboards were checked. No trace. The boys ran out with lanterns. They called her name across lawns and hedges. Mr. Otis remembered a band of travellers camped in the park. He rode out to where they had been. The camp was empty. The fire still burned. Plates lay on the grass. The family began to fear the simplest fears. Kidnapping, an accident, a body in the pond. They dragged the water. They searched the grounds. Nothing. Night came, heavy and silent. The house filled with frightened faces. Supper was brought, but few could eat. Mr. Otis decided detectives would be summoned in the morning. Then midnight struck. At the last stroke, there was a crash, a cry, a peal of thunder, as if the house itself had spoken. A panel at the top of the stairs swung open. Virginia stepped out onto the landing. She was pale, very pale, and she held a small casket in her hands. Mrs. Otis ran to her. The boys crowded close. The Duke, young, anxious, devoted, could hardly breathe. Mr. Otis, shaken and angry with relief, demanded to know where she had been. Virginia answered quietly. "I have been with the ghost," she said. "He is dead. And you must come and see him." They followed her through the opening, down a narrow secret passage, into a low room with a tiny grated window. In the wall was an iron ring, and chained to it lay a skeleton on the stone floor. Near it sat an empty jug and an old dish. Only dust remained. Virginia knelt. She folded her hands. She prayed in silence. One of the twins looked out the window. "The almond tree has blossomed," he whispered. Virginia rose. A strange calm light seemed to rest on her face. "God has forgiven him," she said. And in that moment, even those who had laughed the most felt the weight of the house lift. Chapter 7. A few days later, a funeral left Canterville Chase, late at night. Black horses, a heavy hearse, torches in the hands of servants. Lord Canterville came to attend. He rode with Virginia as chief mourner. In the churchyard beneath the yew tree, the service was read. When the coffin was lowered, Virginia stepped forward. She laid a cross of white and pink blossoms upon it. The moon broke through cloud, silvered the stones. A nightingale sang from the trees. Virginia thought of the garden the ghost had described. Her eyes filled. She spoke little on the way home. The next morning, Mr. Otis spoke with Lord Canterville about the jewels. They were valuable, old, beautiful. Mr. Otis felt uneasy keeping them. He spoke of principle, of simplicity, of what belonged to whom. Lord Canterville listened with a restrained kindness. He said the jewels were Virginia's. They had been given freely. And the purchase, in its own strange way, had included everything that belonged to the ghost. Mr. Otis protested. Then, at last, he yielded. Time passed. Virginia grew older. Life moved on. The house became ordinary again. A house with sunlight, with voices, with rooms that no longer held their breath. When Virginia married the young Duke of Cheshire, her jewels were admired by everyone. Later, the Duke and Duchess returned to Canterville Chase. They walked to the quiet churchyard beyond the pine woods. They stood by the grave. Virginia brought roses and laid them down. They spoke softly in the ruined chancel of the old abbey. The Duke asked her what had happened to her in the hidden place. Virginia looked away. She said she could not tell him. Not yet. She only said the ghost had taught her something. What life means, what death means, and why love is stronger than both. They stood for a time in silence. Then they turned back toward the house, and the night, for once, felt peaceful.